Welcome back to Out and About Today. This is our final segment on Nashville Pride's Community Visioning Project. Okay, we've got to get to the data. Phil and Brent are here. So you started with the question, what do you need to thrive as a community? What was the answer in general before we get to all the recommendations? What did we say?
The answer was so wide and varying. I mean, people needed access to health care. They wanted places to engage in community. They wanted, we heard community center over and over again. We heard opportunity to engage in sport, in sport activities. The list was far and wide, and so what we ended up doing was we ended up taking all of this information and cultivating it down into a series of recommendations to make it more bullet point and more palatable. Instead of saying, we need all these things, let's figure out how we can do all of these things, or at least a majority of these things in one.
Was there a little bit of sort of not necessarily surprise, but were people showing up learning maybe some of the wants they had were already there?
Without a doubt. And I think that was the most exciting part for a lot of people, is that they would feel something inside themselves, or they would feel that, feel it in their heart that I need this, or I really miss Out Central, or I want to find community outside of a bar,
Right.
or I want to engage in a sports activity, or I just need a friend, or I need a mental health care provider, and all of those things were very much similarities for a lot of folks.
Right. So you ranked all this feedback. Give us the top recommendation of. Yeah, what is it?
So there are two.
Okay.
There are two. So we have two top-line recommendations from this report. The first one is that our community really wants our organizations to speak with each other and work together in a much better way than we do now. And so one of the things that we are going to be doing from that recommendation is developing a Middle Tennessee Pride Council, similar to what we talked about in the first segment.
Right. So we had that idea a long time ago, Brent.
There have been multiple iterations of this.
I know, of course.
But now it's a time for all of us to come together and say, okay, now our community is telling us that we need to do this.
There's data.
And there's data. Right.
Well, it's so much bigger. Like you said at the start, so many more people, so many more organizations communicate.
So many more organizations. I mean, we have 35 that we can count, and that's not including organizations that don't necessarily have a 501c3 status, but are ongoing meetup groups. The other recommendation is that our community is really telling us that they need a space.
Right.
And that space can be encompassing in a lot of different things. It can do a lot of different things. We need people want a coffee shop. They want a safe, queer space to be.
And right now we have a demographic of the recommendations, the primary and the secondary. It might be hard to read, and I think it's important to note before we somehow run out of time that the entire 40-page report can be found on Nashville Pride's website. Get to the Get Involved tab and look for Community Visioning Project. You can also Google search it. It's there. It's very easy to find. So the community center, so we're talking about, one was communication. We all need to communicate better, these organizations. And two, a community center. So I just want to play negative nanny, or Pammy.
Negative Pammy.
We all romanticize how that's going to look.
I know.
I love the idea. When I first came out, I called the, whatever it was called at the time.
Rainbow Community Center.
That's right. And I was a part of a women's group, and it was the best thing in the world. Like, I just went once a week and talked about, I'm gay. But it's been hard to make last here. So that leads us to, we've got these recommendations. Those are real. This is what real people said. And so what happens next?
So right now we are in the process of, we've created 4 different task forces. These task forces and all that detail can be found at nashvillepride.org/CVP. But our task forces are specifically working on identifying asset maps. And so they're building out these asset maps of programs that exist in the community and where we have gaps. And so that we're not stepping on anyone's toes. And so that is working specifically in community, within young adults, older adults, and then healthcare. Once we have that data, it is being fed over to a steering committee that is going to be responsible for building out a business plan for a community center. And so we are creating a steering committee currently that is going to be 10 people deep, but all very active people in the community who have connections to creating a business.
Right.
or running a business, because very much of what we are creating in the community center is a business. Yes, it is a nonprofit organization that we're hoping to create, but it has to operate as a business. And there are some really wonderful leaders in our community who have stepped up to the plate to say, yes, I want to be involved in that. From there, we're going to move into the creation of a board and fundraising, and all of that should be happening in the course of the coming months. So stay tuned.
So the data was released in November. Here we sit in March, and now we have these task force that are going to collect data and throw it to a steering committee. If there were ever lessons learned about how not to do it, and then because it sounds, this is planned. This is not a quick, let's rent a building and get everybody to sublease space. And I mean, I love it. It makes me feel really happy. Yeah. And I thank you for...
We want to be very mindful about how we're approaching things. We want to make sure that the data is there, and that we have plans, and that we are not reliant on one source of income. And there's the multiple approaches to this to make sure that this is not something that we build and then 5 years fails because of...
Well, and that thoughtful approach, I would imagine, would garner those people willing to participate more, so knowing that plan was there. And,
that's the hope.
So I would urge our viewers to go to the website, nashvillepride.org, and perhaps join one of these task forces. If you have information under these categories, young, old, health, young, old. I know that's not it.
Young adults, older adults.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay, well, we're out of time already. Can you believe it?
Crazy.
I know.
This needs to open by 2025, Phil. Okay? Thank you for coming. I know you're going to be back. And that's all the time we have for tonight. You can follow us on your favorite social channels for breaking news and entertainment, or watch clips of the show anytime at outandabouttoday.com. See you next weekend. Good night.